So now I want to introduce our presenter today. We're fortunate and very privileged to have Director Tommy Johnson with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So go ahead, Director.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Okay, as I indicated earlier, we're technically challenged on this end, so we couldn't log on earlier as we wanted to. I sent the presentation over, so if someone could pull that up, I'll go through the presentation real quick. And while they're pulling that up, as you all know, we recently transitioned from the Department of Public Safety to the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So with that change, we jettisoned off all law enforcement entities, the sheriff's, narcotics enforcement, harbors, a small detachment at the airport, and executive protection for the governor and lieutenant governor. They formed the Department of Law Enforcement for the state. And our mission now changed from one of law enforcement to refocus to corrections. Corrections is always the biggest division in the department. And now we can focus all of our efforts, our resources, and staff training on corrections rehabilitation. So what that means is some people saw public safety as a punitive model for corrections. And really, we're not here to punish anybody. The courts have levied the sentence. Our job is to try to rehabilitate and prepare offenders to re-enter society. And so we're changing what some perceived as a punitive model to one that's more evidence-based, evidence-based and program-driven, and hopefully wraparound services and the warm handoffs that you guys talked about in your meeting earlier. Now, I want to make it clear that this is not going to be easy. It's not going to be overnight, and it's not going to be cheap. But if we expect better outcomes and to reduce the cost to the taxpayer of the criminal justice system as a whole, then we have to invest in the system up front before they come to prison and jail, which should be the last resort. And then while they're here, for those that do make it this far, we should provide them with evidence-based programs and services and more restorative services than just, hey, go to class, do this, do that. We really need to change that mindset, and not just for the public. We need to change it in our own employees, to be honest with you. And therein lies the rub for us, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So I'm going to give you a little information on this presentation about public safety, some general information, some things you probably didn't know about the department, and some things you probably did, but that'll give you an idea of the scope of the operations we have and some of the dire needs we have with respect to funding. So the first slide you see up there, we're just one of 6 jurisdictions that are unified. And that simply means that in a unified jurisdiction, the state owns and operates the prisons and the jails, whereas the other 44 states on the mainland, the counties own and operate the jails and the states own and operate the prisons. But we're such a small state. We are a unified state, and honestly, I don't believe that the counties have the money to run the jails. As an example, our Oahu facility is 628 bed. It's designed for 628. We have over 930 folks there now, and we sometimes spike up to 1150 to 1200, and at a cost of tens of millions of dollars a year to run that. Next slide, please. So we're broken down into 3 major divisions. The administration division, which has 149 positions. That's our payroll, labor relations, fiscal, planning, procurement, IT staff, our training and services division. Next is the corrections division with approximately 1,901.4 positions. That's our corrections officers, our maintenance staff in the facilities and case managers. And then next is our rehabilitation services and programs division, about 530. That's our educational services, substance abuse treatment services, sex offender treatment, volunteer services, food service, and library services as well. But the corrections division is quite clearly, as you can see, the largest division in the department. And if you count full-time positions, our corrections division is larger than the entire judicial and legislative branch of government combined if you just count the full-time positions. Next slide, please. So here's just a little bit of information about our budget for fiscal year 25 and 26. $318,993,387 for fiscal year 25, 26. is slightly higher at 320,555,674. We have a total of 2,615 positions. As you saw in the previous slide, 1,901.4 of those positions are in the Corrections Division. We currently have 794.25 vacancies, which is a 30.4 vacancy rate. Now that sounds high, and it is, but other states, other departments like DHERD for one department, Human Resources Development, are higher than we are. We've done a number of initiatives to try to increase our hiring. Mainly, most of those positions are ACO positions, to be perfectly frank with you. We've increased our recruitment. In 2023, we held 3 recruit classes. In 2024, we held 6. We plan to hold 6 classes in 2025, 26, and 27. We reduced the in-academy time from 11 weeks to 8 weeks to get people on the floor faster. As a result of the increased classes from 2023 to 24, we put 56 officers on the floor in 2026. And in 2023, we put 56 officers. In 2024, we put 154 officers on the floor. So while we are making progress, we still have a huge vacancy rate. And then we have a high attrition rate. We have a lot of people coming up for retirement. And in corrections, normally the folks retire right at 30 years if they haven't made it up to a management level position, because corrections is hard on your body and your family. These guys work long hours. Sometimes they're working 16 and 24 hours at a time. And so we proposed some incentives to Department of Human Resources Development, which was hiring bonuses, shortest category differentials. We also proposed to provide longevity bonuses for those people with 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 years service, providing they come to work 80% of the time. And the last thing is we proposed, and this is an internal thing we can do, providing we have the money that if a person is coming to work 80% of the time for the full year, then we would allow them, providing we had the resources, to cash in up to 2 weeks of vacation beginning 1 November through the end of, middle of October, through the end of November, so that if they were able to cash it in, if they qualified and we had the resources, they would get that money right before Christmas to help them with their family for Christmas. And so those are some of the things we thought about doing I proposed to DHERD. The other thing we did was did a cost benefit analysis for ACO positions, vacancies, and we've determined that if we have 6 or more recruits on the neighbor islands, that it's more beneficial and fiscally responsible for us to take the academy to them and fly 2 instructors there and put the instructors up for a week and fly them home on the weekends instead of putting the students up here to go to a hotel and paying per diem. And a lot of young ACO recruits didn't want to leave their families for that 8 weeks and 11 weeks when it was 11-week course. So we understood that. So that's helped us a great deal with our recruitment effort. We were in the theaters this summer. We did newspaper ads. We were on the bus. We're trying to get into the rail. So we're doing a lot to look at recruitment, not just for the ACO positions, but for all our vacancies, because our vacancies span the globe from ACOs to secretaries to clerks to ground maintenance workers. We need doctors, nurses, psych social workers, regular social workers, human service professionals, you name it. So if you know somebody out there interested in state employment, the state of Hawaii has the best employment package in the nation. 21 days vacation, 21 days sick leave a year, plus 9 paid holidays. And once you're 10 years, you're vested. There's a bill moving before the legislature to try to have people vested at 5 years, which is a smart idea because a lot of people don't stay with the same company for a long time as they used to. So that's our information on what we're doing for recruitment. Next slide, please. So this gives you an idea what the director's office looks like. The staff I have 3 deputy directors. I have 1 executive assistant, a public information officer, a private secretary. The offices that fall under my office are the Internal Affairs Office, Inspection, Investigation, Civil Rights Compliance, Litigation Coordination, and 2 administratively attached agencies, the Hawaii Patrolling Authority, and the CVCC is the Crime Victim Compensation Commission. Now, I want to make it clear, those are administratively attached agencies. I don't exercise any authority over them, but they're small and they don't have the personnel and fiscal infrastructure, and so we provide those services to them, as well as our agency acts as a pass-through for their budget. I have no say in their budgets and nor would I want to be honest with you. And I have 1 administratively attached committee, which is the Correctional Industries Advisory Board, which we just stood up late last year after a board not being in existence for probably 7 years or more. So the purpose of that advisory board is to look at Hawaii Correctional Industries budget and programs and any business plans they put forward to make sure that those are viable and that they're revenue driven, because our correctional industries division, which we'll get to in a minute, they are self-funded. So they get no money from the state whatsoever for operations. So they have to always look at ways to make money, and at the same time, in doing so, provide meaningful employment opportunities and work skills for the inmates who are part of the HCI program. Next slide. Okay, so we have 4 major programs in the Deputy Director for Administration's office. Right there, you have the fiscal office. They handle accounting, payroll, vouchering, administrative services. They handle all administration, planning, research. They do our budget, procurement, information, technology, systems, and office services. And then you have our human resources office. They do labor relations, staffing. They do our hiring and recruitment, transactions for when employees get promoted or there's some kind of a pay transaction. They do employee relations. And then the last is the training services division. And there we have administration, program support, firearms, and corrections. So that is our TSD. They provide training to our recruit classes for ACOs, familiarization classes for people who first come on board to work with us, supervisory development classes for people when they first become supervisors, and as they move up through management, we provide training for them. And then we have annual training that's needed for use of force, OC spray, defensive tactics, bloodborne pathogens, things like that. Next slide. So here is the Deputy Director for Correctional Institutions. This is the largest division, as I mentioned earlier. In that office, you have the Institution Division Administrator, who's the direct supervisor to the wardens, and that person reports directly to the Deputy Director. Under the Institution Division Administrator, you have 8 facilities. We have, of course, OCCC, WCCC, HCCC, KCCC, and MCCC. Now, those are all jails. Now, if you notice by the women's facility, I put hybrid facility off to the right. That's because we recently moved all the female pretrial detainees and sentence misdemeanors from OCCC to WCCC, and OCCC will no longer take female intakes. It will be only male intakes there, which will allow us to spread out some, because OCCC is grossly overcrowded. Their design capacity is 628. They have over 900 folks there. We recently opened a new dormitory, 168-bed dormitory at the women's facility. We also recently opened a new administration building, a new visitation center, and an intake service center. We remodeled the Ho'okipa Cottage right above it, which is where I started my career as a youth corrections officer in March of 1997. That's going to be our work furlough program. And we're currently remodeling the kitchen and the laundry to be able to handle the intake of the 122 females from OCCC that we brought over. Now we have 3 prison facilities. We have the 1 medium security facility, which is the Halava medium security facility here on Oahu. The new OCCC will be built near that location. We have the Oahu Correctional Facility, which is a minimum security camp, a work camp here on Oahu. And then we have the Kulani Correctional Facility there on the Big Island. That's where we have our SOTP program. We also have a smaller sex offender treatment program here on Oahu at Halava. Because we don't have space here, we contract with 1 private prison on the mainland, which is the Arizona, the Saguaro Correctional Center, owned and operated by Core Civic. Right now, we house about 937 convicted felons there. So some people have asked the question, well, Tommy, if you're building a new jail, why can't you bring the inmates back? Because the jail is for pre-sentence felons, pre-sentence misdemeanors, sentence misdemeanors, and detainees. So there's not a prison setting. So in order to bring the inmates back from the mainland who are convicted felons, we would have to build a new medium security facility here. The most recent facility built was Halava. It opened up in 1985. Parts of OCCC, next slide, please. Parts of OCCC are over 111 years old, and it really has to be replaced. But that's just right there for a second. And so what you really have to understand that prisons and jails operate 24/7, even through the pandemic. So no matter what, it's a lot of wear and tear on the water, the sewer, the infrastructure, the furnishings of the facility. Over the years, the department has been has lacked funding to appropriately maintain the facilities. And so we have what's called a deferred maintenance program. And all deferred maintenance means is no more money. So we defer scheduled maintenance, and that's why so many things break down, because if you defer and defer and defer, when something breaks down, now you got to buy it brand new. And so I'll give you an example. We may ask for $40 million in CIP and repair money, but we might only get 15 or $20 million. Well, now we got to figure out, of those projects we have, right now we have 800 projects statewide out of 8 facilities, that where we need to do some type of repair work or remodeling or some type of serious safety issue, that we end up playing whack-a-mole with the little bit of money we have. And when something breaks down because it's on deferred maintenance, now we have to take money from a planned project and put it there, like $500,000 for a chiller or something like that. And now we play whack-a-mole with the problems that come up. This slide here is just to show you the type of people we have in our detainee population. We have pre-trial detainees who are not sentenced yet, but are pending trial. We have sentenced petty misdemeanors, which are 30 days or less. Sentenced misdemeanors, which are 1 year or less. That is the core right there of your jail population, along with pretrial felons. Now, in Hawaii, right now, 87% of the 1,000+ people we have in our Hawaii facilities who are convicted felons, 87% of the other side of the population is sentenced misdemeanors and pretrial felons waiting to go to trial. So what that tells us is 2 things. One, it's taking too long for people to get to trial for felonies. And 2, that a lot of these sentenced misdemeanors and pretrial misdemeanors can be out in the community under supervision, providing they had the right services. Then we have the parole violators, probation violators, and then we have extradition cases. So the extradition cases are people who have an active warrant for another jurisdiction that are arrested here, that we're just waiting for the issuing state to come and pick them up. They've asked us to hold them in custody until they pick them up. That's a very small number. We might have at the most at any given time in custody 2 to 3 people in that status. At the top, near the top of this chart, you're going to see an address there, HPTTP. That is the address to our monthly population reports we put on our website. If you ever want to see the reports, we put them up weekly, and they're usually for the previous week. So right now we have 3,717 people in custody in our facilities. We serve about 13,300 meals per day on a 5-week cycle, including medical and religious diets, to show you the scale of the operations we do. That includes ACOs we have to feed 1 meal to while they're on each 8-hour shift. Next slide. So this gives you an idea of the design capacity and the operational bed capacity and the current head count for the facilities we have. So I'll just go over OCCC. OCCC has a design capacity of 628. We have an operational capacity of 954. What that means is 2 people to a cell. Our current head count is 928, so we're at 97.3% of our operational capacity, but we're over our design capacity, where you have 1 person or 2 people per cell instead of 3 people per cell, depending on the size cell. We're over by 50%. If you look down to item number 7, that is a special needs facility at Halawa. We had to close it because it is in such disrepair that it cannot be rehabilitated, just as OCCC is in disrepair. So those are 90 beds that we absorbed into Halawa medium security facility in number 6, right above that. So that gives you an idea of our population percentages. So what you can see is our prisons are not overcrowded. In fact, Hulani Correctional Facility is operating at 38.5%. Waiava Correctional Facility is operating at 43.4%. So you ask yourself, well, if you have 2 prisons that are operating below where their design capacity is, in the case of Waiava, it's 294, but they have 145, which is 43.4%. Why can't you bring the inmates back from the mainland? Because there's a classification issue. The vast majority of the folks on the mainland are medium security inmates who have longer sentences, who have more criminal history, who have more involved criminal histories than the other folks we have. So we're taking a look at our classification system now to see if we're artificially overclassifying people and keeping them upstream too long. And I'll give you an example. If someone commits a greatest misconduct and they go to medium security for 18 months, well, the problem is if we don't review that every 6 months, then it's really time-driven, not behavior-driven. So we're switching to a behavior-driven model. We just had Professor Janet Davidson from Chaminade complete a review of our classification system, and we're doing okay with respect to the jail population assessment, which is ORAS. However, on the LSIR, it appears that we may be a little bit off. So we're going to look at our assessment instruments to see if we're artificially keeping people at higher levels than we should. And if we are, then we're changing the classification instruments and we'll be able to move people downstream to go to Waiava and Kulani before they go to work furlough. So we just entered two things we just did to address that issue. One, I ordered last year that no Class C nonviolent offenders be sent to the mainland. And then two, we started a pilot project where we're starting to bring inmates back from the mainland at 60 months prior to TPD, that is the tentative parole date, which is the end of a minimum term expiring last in time. And we're going to see for 2 years how that works and us trying to move them downstream to get them to the minimum security facilities faster and then on to work furlough. So we honestly just started that on 1 January of this year through 31 December of next year. We're going to track that cohort group recidivism rates to see if by moving them faster, are we increasing their recidivism rate because they may not be ready. So we'll have those answers in about 2 years from now. Next slide. Okay, so this is the new office of the Deputy Director of Rehabilitation Services and Programs. So before we morphed from PSD to the DCR, Department of Corrections Rehabilitation, we had a Deputy Director for Law Enforcement, a Deputy Director for Corrections, and a Deputy Director for Administrations. So while we kept the Deputy Director for Administration, we retitled the Deputy Director for Corrections to the Deputy Director for Correctional Institutions, and we got rid of the Deputy Director of Law Enforcement position and created this position for program services and rehabilitation, because we realized that if we're going to do this paradigm shift, then we need to put our focus at a policy level with a deputy director who's in charge of the programs and services so we can align them all to make sure they're evidence-based. And so under this office has 6 major programs. That's the victim notification services. That is the SAVIN program, along with the RAVs, the restitution and victim services. So I don't know if some of you don't know, SAVIN is the statewide automated victim information notification system, which I originally started with a VOCA grant in 2007 when I was a Deputy Director for Corrections the first time. And we felt that that office was critically important so that people could sign up, victims, family members of people incarcerated, could sign up free and be notified of 21 different trigger points if something happened to that case. And so we went one further and we co-located our SAVIN staff and our restitution and victim services staff with the CVCC, the Crime Victim Compensation Commission. So we created, in essence, a one-stop shop for victim services here in Oahu. Then we have the Reentry Coordination Office. This office, though it's small, it's critical to our overall success as far as reentry goes, because they do centralized reentry services, coordination and training for the case managers. They have a number of contracts and services that they provide. We're trying to build out that office now. So if you know of anyone who may qualify and interested in coming on board as an SR24 corrections program specialist, we can go down to a 22. Then we want to hire them to come on board to help us fill out the services, because this office trains the case managers. So we need to make sure everyone's on the same page with respect to following policy and procedures when it comes to interactions with the inmates, case plans, and also exit plans for the inmates. We have the Hawaii Correctional Industries Division under that deputy director as well. I explained a little bit about that before. So they are self-funded, completely self-funded. They have a large contract with the Department of Transportation and several other contracts with other state agencies to provide work lines and provide other type services. They also have, they sell HCI goods and services, and they run our commissary operations statewide. 4% of the commissary profits go to paying for the SAVIN program, and a percentage of the 5.4 cents per minute phone calls, whether it's long distance or local calls, goes to support the SAVIN program. The SAVIN program is also special funded. They get no money from the general fund at all. Then we have the intake service division on all 4 islands at our jails, not our prisons. And they do the initial intake, the initial assessment. We have a assessment for the assessment instruments like the ORAS for the jail population, the LSIR, ACES, and associated trailers for the prison population. They also do other type assessments as well as our medical provides assessment, our psychiatry provides assessments as people come in. Then we have the Correction Program Services Division. They handle all of the programs: education, substance abuse, sex offender, treatment, food services, library, and volunteer services. That's also critical to working closely with the reentry office to make sure we're providing evidence-based programs and services to the inmates. And right now, there's a $4 million in the current budget request that the governor supported for us to put toward reentry efforts. I'll explain that in a second. Then we have the Corrections Healthcare Division. We are the healthcare provider for everyone in our custody and care. So our doctors are the primary care physicians for whether the person's in jail, whether the person's a detainee, or whether they're in prison. So we provide all the services from soup to nuts for them. What we cannot provide for them, we will send out them to a specialist to take care of. We spend over $20 million a year in healthcare services for the people in our custody and care. Next slide, please. Okay, I know that was kind of fast to run through. I did want to, can we go back one slide? I apologize. I did say I was going to mention something else about Hawaii Correctional Injury. So a couple of things. Part of the $4 million in our budget, we intend to break down to do some initiatives. I had originally asked for $1.92 million to do pilot programs with several unions to do what's called like an apprenticeship program, where we will pay the inmates a living wage that will go into their savings account and buy the initial safety equipment and whatever they needed. The union, tradecraft unions would provide the training for them and agree to make them union members once they completed the apprenticeship program and hopefully get them employment on the outside. Because I didn't get that 1.92 million, I'm going to take 500,000 of the 4 million to try to do a proof of concept pilot program, so I can go back to the legislature in a few years and say, see, this works. These people are now contributing members of society. They are making good money. Their recidivism rate is lower, so maybe we can look at extending that program some. Another portion of the money is we're looking at providing housing services temporarily for 30 to 60 days, 90 to 180 days in the community in like a clean and sober house type setting for those inmates that, even though they went to work for, they don't have enough money saved up. Because ideally, you want someone to finish all their programs before their TPT date. You want them to go through be on work furlough, and then when they see the parole board, should be on extended furlough. So the difference in furlough is they are living in the facility, going to work every day, coming back to the facility. Ideally, if they've been in the program for 90 days or more, then they can be more self-sufficient, and we place them on extended furlough where they live in the community and continue to save money. Those are the people we look at targeting for the short-term housing because they're already doing well. They have some money saved up, but not enough because let's face it, Hawaii is expensive. And so we think that would help them bridge that gap to be more successful as they're transitioning out. And so there's some other initiatives that we're looking at doing as well with some of the funding we have. But that's all I have for now, and I'll open it up to any questions you guys might have.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I like what you was talking about.
You cut out. I can't hear you.
You didn't hear anything, Tommy, about when they come out and then they're going to get hit hard with child support. So is it a possibility for them to work in there and to pay their child support from there? You know?
They can try. We have certain statutory deductions that have to come out. Okay, so the first one is 25% of it, any deposit, no matter where it comes from, has to go toward restitution if they owe restitution. And there's a scale, a listing, if you will, priority listing in, I believe it's HRS 849. I can look that up and get it to Les, which has that priority list in it. Which has that priority list in there. I think someone is talking and not muted.
It is still early, but they're moving fast. The president.
Okay, that's better. Okay, so there's a list of priority, and that's how it has to be done. Now, if they make enough money and have a valid bill, if you will, for lack of a better term, I'm sure we can work it out where some of that money goes to the child support. But just note that that will delay them saving money to become self-sufficient. I understand they owe the money in child support, but that will delay them becoming more self-sufficient. So I'm sure that can be worked out, providing they are making enough money where they can pay their obligations to the state, fees and fines, and then at the same time try to pay their court obligations to family court with respect to child support.
Thank you. I want to also be respectful of everybody's time. I know we're running over a little bit. However, I'm going to take a few more questions and yeah, keep the room open. Okay, so I know Echo, you had your hand up, and then
Thank you. Hi, Tommy. Thank you for the presentation. I just had two questions, hopefully can be pretty quick. One was you had mentioned that you guys are going to be in your pilot study of bringing the guys home from Saguaro for that 60 months kind of prior. You're going to keep track of that recidivism rate. I was curious, are we doing something now where we're tracking any recidivism based upon folks that are getting to stay home as opposed to folks that are going out to the main?
The most recent recidivism study that addressed that issue, I think, was done in 2018 or 19. And what it showed was the folks in Hawaii had a 4% higher recidivism rate than those who did the majority of their time on the mainland. But to be honest with you, that's negligible. So it's really not a good one. But that was the latest one that I can recall. And there was another question you said you had two?
Yeah. And then my secondary is, as you're looking at these, you guys are now doing kind of this more rehabilitative model. Are you looking to put out RFPs and things to be able to actually contract services with any of the programs in the community so that we can step up and help? I mean, you mentioned that a few times, and I think we all want to step up and help, but sadly there's those funding and fiscal constraints on us as well.
Yes, the $4 million will help us a great deal to get contract services. Like we really do need housing in Kona, to be honest with you. That's one thing. We need some type of clean and sober contract housing in Kona. We need more services on Kauai because it's really lacking on Kauai. And so, yes, the $4 million will help us. But if you want to know what you can do to help is when you see the governor's budget testify in support of the money for public safety to provide reentry services. I can tell you this, it costs us $307 a day to keep somebody incarcerated. If we can provide those services or the other agency provide those services in the community, it's much, much less. I'll give you an example. It's about $9.80 a day for somebody on parole. Now that's soup to nuts. That's supervision, that's the services they refer them to. However, if we're going to keep them incarcerated $307 a day, we're wasting money. If we put money up front in the system, then we can reduce the amount of people in incarceration. We can reduce the size of our prisons and jails, and we'll have safer communities because these people will have job skills and they won't recycle back into the system. So whatever you can do to support the budget would be great because we're severely underfunded and have been for decades.
Great. Director Johnson, great to see you. Dan Mistak, we've met before to talk about 1115 waivers and the many other things that are happening in the healthcare space. I'm curious, how are you all thinking about the passage of the new 1115 waiver that happened in January, which will allow for Medicaid services 90 days before release? Are you going to try and protect, do you think that you'll be providing them directly? Are you going to be trying to contract with people to come in? Are you all going to become Medicaid providers? Will you basically rely more on community providers too? And close connected to that too, I'm not sure if you're aware, there was a pretty major policy change from the federal government that would allow for federally qualified health centers to offer services 90 days before release inside of jails and prisons and any other facility too. So just wanted to see whether and how you all are thinking about opening your doors to community health providers in order to offer some of these services, which can be reimbursed with federal dollars rather than being state dollars too.
Right. So a couple of things. One, our corrections healthcare administrator, Romy Glidewell, is part of the meetings with DHS on the 1115 waivers. I was part of the initial meetings. My understanding is once they get to the point where they're ready to set up procedures, that's when I'll go back to the table with the healthcare, with the MedQuest administrator, because she's the one who's taking the lead. And then we're going to determine how we can best service those people that qualify. So part of our initiative is what we call reach and wraparound services. So the 90 days you talked about, we're looking at contracting with either Queens or another type of entity that can provide the case management services, so they can work with the case managers in the facility, and then the person's working with their case manager in the facility and also working with whichever vendor we have to do the reach and wraparound services. So there's connectivity and there's continuity, right? They're not working with somebody new. And so we're looking at those things with respect to trying to get the reimbursed back from MedCrest for healthcare services. And so Romy's on that and working with DHS on that now. And so again, once they get to the point we come to the table, I think part of the issue was California got approved last year and they still haven't stood up yet. And so I'm thinking Hawaii's kind of ahead of the ballgame. We're more aggressive, but we're not at the point yet where we can start, sending invoices to the feds to get money back. Yeah. So I hope that answered your question, some at least.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take one more from Kaipo, and then I have the last question. Okay, go ahead, Kaipo.
Hi, Dr. Johnson. Thank you for your presentation. It was very enlightening. You know that what I do is with the college, since I've transitioned from PSD back to Hawaii Community College, and educational and vocational services have been, working relatively well with job readiness and career planning for the inmates. My question is, I'm hoping that we're going to see a budget increase for being able to provide more services. What I'm really concerned about right now is that we haven't had any cultural integration of classes at the prisons, and it's something our data is telling us that needs to come back. But what I'm afraid of is the new the environment with the new administration now, that on a national level. Do you foresee, or do you have any insight as far as funding and what we should be prepared for as far as service providers in the prison that might be affected by new national policies?
Not really. I can tell you this: none of our grants that we get from the federal government have been interrupted with respect to the disbursements to us. We've got 4 disbursements since the supposed freeze went in place. There's a federal judge put a hold on the administration's policy for now. I think it's going to be a rocky road, so I think we just got to stay tuned and see what comes up next. I do think in the end that since Congress, who has authority over the purse strings, allocated the money, I don't think the executive branch can just arbitrarily just stop all the funding. I think the president does have some leeway, but not much, because Congress authorized that funding. I think what we should be concerned with is the stymieing of new funding coming after this approved funding runs out. I think that's going to be more challenging, to say the least.
Okay, I'm sorry, follow up. So, for example, Act 117, Pu'uhonua wellness for servicing incarcerated individuals. It's race-based or DEI type of funding. This is between the agencies and the state. Would we treat those relationships differently between the state funding and other funding federally, I guess, connected to federal funding, that we might have to reword our MOAs, reword our approaches and what kind of educational services we're going to provide?
I'm not sure with this administration. But I get the sense that they're not into diversity programs and culturally based programs. And so I think any type of new funding is going to be challenging. And so if there are existing MOUs and MOAs that have facilitated federal funding, my recommendation is to go back and look at those and see if the wording can be changed around a little bit. For our part, I did approach OHA with a request for them to provide us with Hawaiian practitioners and culturally based programs for Hawaiian inmates. Unfortunately, they just recently changed leadership again. So I have to go back to the drawing board with them again. But unfortunately, the reception I got was lukewarm with the previous head of OHA. And so I have to approach the new person at OHA to see if they're willing to do it. But I'm not going to give up. I'll keep going and keep trying. But if you know of practitioners out there that want to donate their services and time to us, then let us know. I want to make it clear to everybody, we go in every year and we ask for funding for different things, right? There's only so much money in the pot, and corrections is not sexy. We're competing with new schools, new roads, new infrastructure, and we suck revenue. We don't generate revenue, but we're a necessary evil. And as a result, we don't get the funding we need, and our facilities look the way they do, to be perfectly frank. And so, but we're going to keep going. Like I requested 20 positions for more case managers. I think the caseloads are too high in the facility, so they can't do real case management, but we got turned down. I requested 3 more people for our reentry office because we see the lack of staffing there. We know where we need to be, and we know we need staffing and funding to do it. We asked for tens of millions of dollars in CIP and program funding, but we didn't get it. We got money in the first year of the budget, but in the second year, out of the $329 million ask, we got $5 million. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Forward, if there's anything the college could do to contribute data or even some insight as to how much more money their budget can make impact on, I just think that maybe there's an educational piece here missing for our legislators.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And so finally, I have just one comment and a question. In Kona, you mentioned the Kona Housing, the Clean and Sober director, and a couple of years ago, and prior to that, we had the contract for Kona. We were the only applicant again from the last contract that came out, the last RFP. The negotiations were centered around how much a day, and we were getting previous to that $37 a day per bed per day, and we looked at corner prices and we looked at our costs and everything, and it was a 2+2 contract, so 2 year plus 2 years, and $45 a day was our proposal. We couldn't come to an agreement, and so we weren't able to continue with that contract. I'm hoping that that a review will be done in the next RFP for Kona or for others about our dollar per bed per day, because you mentioned how much it is inside, and it's such a big, huge difference outside. I don't know why it can't be a little bit more. And the question that I had is regarding those clean and sober contracts, would it be possible to consider, instead of furlough and parole only, that you do a contract, clean and sober contract on the diversion and deflection pieces for HCCC? We do have access to a building in downtown Hilo, and this might apply for other places too, but we can significantly reduce the number of homeless and jail inmates cycling through that front end piece with a contract that would be provided for that particular type of services. So similar services, only thing front end instead of reentry.
Okay, two things. One, for the deflection, unfortunately, I would not be able to go into that arena because they're not in my jurisdiction, so I would have no authority by which to provide services or bed space to them. That would be more the city and the county, Department of Human Services, and I think Dr. Michael Champion, who's working out of the governor's office, is trying to do kind of a Delancey Street model. He's had some meetings on the Big Island with some of the key players, because I attended one of the meetings with him with the chief administrative judge and some of his staff and the probation administrator. Now, for the diversion program, yes, once they're in my custody, if I have jurisdiction over them, I can divert some folks. But it would take on the greater scale, it would be the courts would have to okay it. So I'll give you an example. For the pretrial detainees in our custody, the courts deny 7 out of every 10 requests for supervised release we provide them. So to Kelsey's credit, on the Big Island, our intake service and administrator there, she was able to increase our electronic monitoring, which allowed us to put more people out on supervised release. So we're going to look at increasing our electronic monitoring across the state so that we can get more people out. Because I can tell you this, and I've said this numerous times, someone with mental health issues, the jail is the least expensive, is the most expensive, least effective option. If they're off their medication, they're not going to know they got a court date in 3 weeks from now. And so they keep getting contempt of court. They finally get arrested. They sit there in jail. They decompensate. The jail is a predatory environment. It is not a place for someone with mental health issues. And to some degree, the system has to change because we are in a way criminalizing mental health issues and not addressing it up front. And so that's where the deflection comes in at. And I think that's what Department of Health, Department of Human Services got to get off their butt and step up. Prosecutors got to stop saying put everybody in jail because everybody doesn't belong in jail, right? So, sorry, I got off on a tangent there. My bad.
No, thank you. That actually goes right aligned with what we're doing right now. So I wanted to have more conversation with you about that possibility for diversion because we do have the entities aligned here with the courts and probation and county administration and the building to do it at. So again, thank you so much for such an informational and engaging conversation with you and your presentation. And really thank you for supporting our efforts as a consortium and all of the other partners that we have here at Going Home Hawaii. So again, thank you so much, Director Johnson, and thank you all very much for hanging in there through the meeting. Looking forward to seeing you next month. Aloha. I'm keeping the room open for a few more minutes if you want to hang out. Okay. Some people are, yeah. Grayson, Maya,
Yeah,
Ely.
I'm gonna go call Kramer right now. I get his number and stuff. We'll talk to him.
He told you to talk to him.
Yeah, he told me. He messaged me.
He told you?
Yeah, he messaged me on the chat, so I don't call him.
Okay, yeah. Okay, hang on. Let me get there first because we had a meeting scheduled with him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hold on.
Let's do it.
Great. That's good. Yep. Any comments or discussion?
I was just
Kaipo?
No comment. It was good. I wanted to ask him a question. Oh, go ahead, Kaipo.
Oh no, I was just hanging
Go
out
ahead.
to see what everybody's thoughts was, on this whole topic.
Appreciate the trigger fingers.
Continuing on.
We urgently need you to take action.
I was gonna ask him a question, but never had time. But about the ACOs, because of the employment. And if it's possibility if the inmates was to finish up their time and they got pardoned, would they be allowed to work in the jails?
That's a great question. Pardons take a while, but that should be able to clear I think even if you have a pardon, there's a requirement of how many years that you have to be off paper, like most employment places. That might take some legislation to change some of that.
Yeah, so I heard something too, another one about the union, that they were gonna put them under union. So that's good too, But-
It is union, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kaipo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was trying to see while they're working in there, because he said something about it's a possibility that they will have that job when they come out, you know. They don't have to worry about it. They can have that job. Right? Was I wrong on that?
No,
Okay.
it's I think those are all possibilities. Given the workforce today, and Kaibo's in that field of providing workforce, skilled workforce, and I think if you have the training and the education and the career pathway, but you don't have the employers to hire, right? And the barriers are still there, then what's really the end result?
I missed the part he talked about it, the apprenticeships, but that's the way that we're trying to get more buy-in from PSD, and it just hasn't seemed to have been working out by, I work with the unions, and if they go with the apprenticeship pathway, then there is no background check or no application that would ask if they were formerly incarcerated, and these are the kind of things that can increase good jobs, not just entry-level work. And that's one way, getting them over to get a degree. The degree seems to overshadow that check mark also, but it's just how to get ways to get them more competitive in the workforce marketplace. Yeah, I wanted to ask him some hard questions, but I didn't want to put him on the spot.
Yeah. Thanks. This our consortium is not the ledge. Yeah, but I know. Thank you. I'm gonna have to end the meeting. So thank you so much, Rachel. Good seeing you. I think Grayson's just
Bye,
on there,
Kaipo.
but
Bye, Rachel. Nice meeting you guys.
Nice.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Aloha.
aloha.
Hopefully by the time we hear, we have